Waiting for the AI god to tell us who we were. So
Tell everybody who we are.
Here we are. Clearly, we're Act 2. So as it was mentioned and talked about a lot in Act 1, because they had a lot to say about us. I actually am Alise Deeb. I'm with Dragonfly Strategies. I am the Chief Revenue Officer, and I've been overseeing revenue and distribution for much of my career. I do remember starting at the desk when running night audit took 9 hours, and then also having a reservations team where I would get reservations from the 1-800 number on a dot matrix printer. So I guess I just really dated myself. And for those of you who do not know what a dot matrix printer is, you can Google it. So, very good. So I'm going to let my panel go ahead, and if you want to start at the end and introduce yourself and who you're with.
Sure. Hi, I'm Harasymiw. I am the VP of Enterprise Distribution at Amadeus. So I'm going to, as a lawyer in the room, throw out I'm speaking here not as part of Amadeus, so they don't come after me and, I tank the stock price because I say something wrong. So I'm coming here from being somebody who's worked at a CRS. I worked at Sabre Hospitality for years as well. So I'm kind of coming from that perspective. So don't quote me as Amadeus, please. Now, I'll do that kind of caveat every time I start talking, so you have to take up the time. Okay.
It's perfect. Hey everyone, my name is Katlynne Eastin. I lead our solutions consultant team at SiteMinder. So working with our global strategic accounts, our largest hoteliers, resellers, and tech partners alike to better inform our product strategy and overall offering.
I'm Peter Strebel. I am the president of the Americas for RateGain. I have been in the hospitality business my entire life. I'm not going to say for how long, but I will tell you, Alise, I was a desk clerk my first job and worked on an NCR 4200. It was a manual machine that you had to punch buttons to check people in. So I've seen a lot, and I'm here not for RateGain. I'm here as a hotelier, and just here to help you guys in the room, people that love our business, to generate more revenue and make our customers happy.
Thank you. And I will go ahead and give you the cliff notes as we were sitting in the back of the room on what we felt like we heard from Act 1. First of all, distribution is broken, and the PMS is here to save us. But there's room for everybody. And revenue managers, we do like profit. So I'm glad to learn that one. So there is some takeaways here. Also, I will tell you, we didn't have any conversations about whether you needed to be nice or not. We just really want to talk about innovation and where we're going to go from here. So the very first thing is there's different products on the stage here, and I wanted to really kind of talk about channel management versus CRS, right? And so Lou, we'll start with you, and just if you want to talk about how a CRS is different than a channel manager perspective.
Sure, yeah, and I'm kind of happy to go into that. So from our perspective, at least from a CRS, and I think a lot of this was covered in that first session. I was frantically taking notes so I could come up with how do I defeat these myths, but actually I kept myself agreeing with the whole thing. So that's kind of the nice part of what I was going to say. But I think trying to compare a CRS or even some of the hospitality platforms we talked about with the rest of channel distribution, I think is different, right? I mean, I think where the PMSs are going, or what we just heard from kind of the folks in the first act, is really part of that growth of the platform, right? I think a lot of this is where we're going with it's some of these conversations I remember having in the past is almost it's from the best of breed. Are you looking at the individual components? What's the most important thing? I want the best of this and the best of that. Or the other phrase which I've always loved is the one throat to choke, right? It's one company that if there's a problem, you've got one person to fix that. And I think it was always weird to me that was kind of a binary decision, right? That you either break it all up or you kind of have one thing doing it. And I think it's one of those things that you need to have the opportunity to do both, right? I think every company is kind of Tanya mentioned is I think you can do that, and there's space for all of us to do what you need. One other thing that I would mention, and kind of I'll pass it on in terms of the channel management piece, is I think it's also important, and the one thing I actually didn't hear, and I apologize if I missed it, but is the value of partnerships, right? So it's not just as important to have the ability to do everything, right? But it's the ability to be able to work with everybody else, especially when we're talking about the distribution space, right? Distribution is broken. We fix it by working together and getting to where we need to be, right? And we have very close relationships with, all the PMSs on stage, I believe. Don't quote me on that again. But I believe we've got a very good relationship with everybody there. We've got excellent relationships with the OTAs. And, being part of Amadeus, we are a GDS. And me, as on the CRS side, have got great relationships with the other GDSs, right? And in order to make us all work better together, from a distribution standpoint, we work well across the face. So that's how we kind of work together. And for me, distribution is just urge. Channel management is just a portion of what the CRS does, and that's where I see a differentiation between us and my colleagues on stage.
And I'll take it next. From a SiteMinder perspective, we actually are moving away from your traditional definition of a channel manager, in the sense that SiteMinder is a unified platform, right? You're hearing this come up again, and it's true. We are evolving to the sense of being a platform that is built to drive revenue. And through that, we see it at the convergence of distribution, intelligence, and then also revenue optimization. So through those three components, then looking to unlock and maximize the revenue potential for a hotelier. So this is going back to when you're looking at a traditional channel manager in the sense of a definition. I like to use the analogy around a swimming pool. So with a hotel, if you were to take the technology stack that they have or their ecosystem, look at it from a swimming pool standpoint, and traditionally you would have the systems run in a swim lane, right? All alongside one another with their very defined roles and specialties. But in a time now where the needs of a hotelier, the tech has evolved, the industry has evolved, we have now actually lifted up those swim lanes up and out of the pool, and you're starting to see those lines blurred, as they mentioned in the kickoff, right? And now it's a little bit murky water, so to say, but it's a fantastic time for innovation to really bleed through and just see where these platforms can take us.
Okay, RateGain, we are a company that's been around now for over 20 years. Started out, I like people say, what do you do for a living? I think I'm there to really generate revenue, optimize revenue for the hotels. The one thing we do, as everybody knows, our core business strategy is we connect GDSs and OTAs to all the demand partners to the supply around the world. We have over 450 demand partners, all the big major ones and all the small ones as well. We work with the majority of hotels, whether it be branded or unbranded, throughout the world. Number two, we also have a lot of products that work on increasing the share of wallet by making the hoteliers have more business intelligence on pricing strategies. Also, we have tools now through a Adara purchase where we can give you information about your customers. We have the world's largest permission-based marketing database of travelers. So we can tell you what people are doing in your ecosystem and what they're doing outside of your ecosystem, and put together audiences for you to market to that are, through AI, as narrowed down as if you want to target the person who just bought a bathing suit and shopped for a flight to Florida. You can contact that person now. And then the third thing we do is we're getting involved in the direct channels by working with social media marketing agency BCV out of Chicago and MHS out of Germany. We're a traditional digital marketing agency for hospitality. So a lot of different things.
A lot of different things, thank you. I do think it's interesting, and they brought up, GDS, and this again dates me. I remember when Expedia started, right? And Expedia, when they came on the scene, they said the GDS is dead. And that was how long ago? Now I'm not going to date myself. So when I think about the GDS, and it still has legs, it still is, is absolutely, if you were to look at Amadeus reporting or the reporting out there from a channel perspective, you still see the volume of revenue it brings to the hotels. So are there any other myths that you heard from the first act that you might want to address or debunk?
I'll kick that one off. So we had some interesting conversation around the numbers thrown, right, from a connectivity standpoint. perhaps a handful are valuable, perhaps you look at 100 and maybe that's your number. And it really comes down to the hotelier, right, from an independent standpoint, but then also at a larger group standpoint and how that broader portfolio is equipped to then properly distribute and ultimately meet their strategy. So looking at just conversations we're having today with hoteliers, it's really, the reality is we're seeing the long-term impacts from COVID and other economic conditions. And so with that, the general sentiment is that hoteliers are not comfortable putting all their eggs in one basket. So then with that in mind, how do we then equip the hoteliers to meet their distribution strategy, but also future-proof them in the sense that we look beyond distribution, so ensuring that we do have those connectivities at hand, right? Simplifying perhaps the means at which they can facilitate those connections, provide the appropriate setup and configs all down to the nitty-gritty, but then to become more efficient at that, and then looking at once more additional revenue incremental opportunities. So is that now at the individual touch points of tapping into new travel segments? Is that looking at guest engagement tools? So once again, you're seeing this expansiveness around new tool sets that we can offer from a platform-based structure.
I think the two things that I heard in this session, one was I don't think there's room. I think one size fits all is a dangerous proposition. I think that hotels are complex businesses. They have different owners, different managers, different brands, different markets, different locations, different customers, and there is not one solution for all. So I'm pretty believe that there is room for channel managers and reservation platforms and all different bells and whistles, and not all one size fits all. The second thing, I don't find distribution broken. I mean, I think with an industry that runs occupancies in excess of 70%, in an industry that snapped back from COVID faster than anything else in the whole wide world, would say to me, distribution is powerful, and it's not broken, it's complex, but it is by no means broken.
Yeah, I guess I'd kind of take a little bit of a different view on, not that last part, but in terms of the the one size fits all, right? So I think we have to look at it, and I can't remember, and I apologize who mentioned this in the first session, but it was the fact that you have to look at what is best for the hotel, right? And this almost kind of goes back to what happened in the AI session, right? Is you have to look, is AI the right thing for you, yes or no? Depends on what is best for you, right? So in this case, you could have a hotel that gets everything they need with one vendor that provides them all of that data. Small hotels, maybe they've got 20, 30 rooms. Do they need a large-scale CRS to do everything and their distribution? Maybe, maybe not, right? And the opposite hand, if you have a small PMS that, does limited things, is that the right choice for a large chain? Probably not. Again, you have to look at those cases where it might make sense that in certain cases the one-size-fits-all approach works, which is why I said I don't think it's really a binary thing. I think their companies have to look at different ways that they do things, approach your customers, find the right vendor to provide the solution for you.
I think it goes back to that idea as well from flexibility, right? We can't say it enough, and we all agree here, the importance of flexibility and just how quick can we get you up to speed, from speed to market to actually now speed to value to market. So it's this new concept, but still ties back to that one topic of flexibility and how do we amplify it across.
Right. And then kind of looking at the individual components too, right, is if you have a component that, again, is the best of breed, it's part of a larger scope, and you have the capabilities that allow certain customers to work with you and say, hey, I like these two customers, or I like these two components from different vendors. Having the ability to interact well as a partnership is better for the hotel. It drives revenue to you as a company. From my perspective, that's kind of how I feel. Again, maybe not an Amadeus view.
And I would say, on our side in Dragonfly, we do a lot of RFPs for technology, and that's a part of, again, one of our verticals. And I will tell you, when we start pulling out an RFP, and I know that there are people in this room who have had to fill out our RFPs, and there's 1,000 questions, and it comes from discovery with the client, right? So every client really is different, and there might be a solution that's one and all because they're smaller, but if they've got a marina and spa, and they've got a hotel, 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 and they've got a ho and an amusement park. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it that one system may not be the answer for them because, they were talking about spaghetti models in the earlier session, and I think of spaghetti models and I look at where does the spaghetti hit the wall. It's not typically on distribution, it's trying to operate your property. So that's where unless I'm mistaken, that's where I see a lot of the noodles. So it's around the PMS. So we would love to see some of that, I think, addressed. And I think, the operators as well. We talk about how complicated distribution is, and I think it was a byproduct of revenue management being seen as, oh, well, they're setting the strategy, so they must be an expert in IT, right? That's how I started. And I think, with Jason and doing the class, there's absolutely, it benefits us all to have this education around distribution and trying to develop, best in class in individuals. I mean, we split apart revenue management and distribution because building out a CRS or a channel management can be just as complicated or less complicated than actually building out a PMS. So it's not like a PMS is, I know people say, oh, we can spin it up in 15 seconds, 15 minutes. I'm just kidding. But it takes a lot more than that because there's business decisions that need to be made behind it. It's not completely intuitive to, whether or not rain makes a difference to how you distribute, channelize your rooms. So I think, from our perspective, what do you look to see from an innovation, as you're looking at your roadmap that makes it life easier from a distribution perspective for the hoteliers? Because at the end of the day, you want competition to benefit the hotels and of course each other, but what are you looking for in your roadmap that says distribution gets easier for a hotelier without having to go to a PMS?
I think we're trying to make it easier because we feel like it's too complicated for hotels to have relationships with 300 demand partners. And how can they really manage 300 different relationships? So we're trying to make it where we can manage these multiple relationships for you as long as we know what your needs and your wants are, give you the flexibility to turn on and off these channels when you want them and when you don't want them. But really kind of taking on the management of those relationships and commercials. I mean, if you're going to be in a hotel or even, say, an independent hotel, and you're going to have 150 demand partners, how much staff would you need to write those contracts, negotiate those commercials, get them hooked up? So we're just really out to kind of take the pain points from the hospitality industry, and that's what we basically do when we visit with our customers is, what's keeping you up at night? What are your pain points, and how can we make them a lot easier for you? Because I'm a hotelier. I think the lady from Oracle said that also, Tanya. And bottom line, the experience happens at the property, and the focus should be on the staff that's checking you in and serving you coffee and cleaning your room, because ultimately that's where the business is, and we want to make it easy so you guys can spend the time and the resources and the money to put the money in the experience.
That's exactly right, and we echo that as well. Just how can we simplify this complexity behind the scenes, right? We say the industry is very fragmented. Well, in reality, it does come down to the individual relationships, the individual connections, right? That's one topic area probably that hasn't been touched on much is just the amount of resources that go into, and I know the PMSs, especially those who are on stage, can directly relate to the amount of work that goes into building those connections from a technical standpoint with the APIs, but then also the relationships with all those individual channels. And then furthermore, as those channels progress and want to develop and enhance their channels for the hotelier as well, making sure that you can actually facilitate that and quickly adopt it and then pass it along to those who are actually connected via you too. So it's a very unique scenario, but then going back to what Peter said, just the importance of simplifying that and enabling, right, almost this one connection, one agreement, and one setup concept to then unlock a bunch of channels through that and providing that flexibility once again, because hey, time is of the essence, and we're all needing it, and it's our most precious resource. So how can we make sure we're providing it to be the most efficient platform to further leverage across?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, efficiency is important. Fixing a lot of kind of the open issues, very critical, making sure we can get through that, making the lives of the hoteliers easier. But we also have to look at the innovation too, right? We can't just fix what's there, which, again, absolutely agree we need to get through some of these challenges. But, as was mentioned kind of on the PMS side, right? We're talking about day use, we're talking about hour use, monthly use, right? New innovations that the PMSs can do, sure, the CRSs can build it out, but then what happens on the distribution side, right? Justbrand.com, which isn't beneficial to the hotels, right? You want the technology to move forward. You don't want to get stuck because of the onward distribution. So again, this is places where I think, from a partnership perspective, we all need to work together within HEDNA, within the other organizations, to kind of move forward, right? ABS, we've been talking about attribute-based selling in a lot of ways. It's being built in the CRSs. A number of the PMSs have that capabilities, but then where does that stop? Oops, sorry. How far does that go, right? We need to make sure that it kind of goes down the road to it. I mean, you can look at how ARI is distributed. Is ARI the right approach? Do we add the capabilities into that? Are we looking at a shopping model, which makes things a lot simpler, right? These are the approaches we have to look at from a technological standpoint, is what's important to the industry, how do we move the industry forward, and from the innovation standpoint, we all need to work at it together.
Working at it together, and then also keep in mind too, if our customers are wonderful resources, right? Mm-hmm. So you ask about the roadmap, and what we did from a product standpoint is just took the time to take a step back and acknowledge we have these sophisticated users in our platform who are in there 24/7 and have actually recognized an increase of revenue correlated to their performance in the platform. So what is it that's actually driving that? And how can we now leverage AI perhaps, right, to then look at the data, consolidate it, provide some automation fueled by intelligence to then equip the hotels to then make more efficient decisions, have dynamic rate plans, have dynamic channels, know exactly when and where to distribute. So there's a lot of exciting things to come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's not just a vendor-driven thing. I think the hoteliers need to be involved in helping us to get to where we need to go. And customers too, right? We want to not just build something because, hey, this looks cool, but if customers don't take advantage of it, then what have we actually built?
And as you mentioned, I mean, we've been talking about ABS for a really long time. We want to merchandise smarter. We want to be different than we have been. I can say, people still build packages, and you're assuming that the guest is going to want to consume what you're selling instead of the reverse, right? Answering what they want to buy. And we really get stuck in that space because it's really about a fulfillment issue, right? And that's not, at the CRS level, that's going down to the PMS level. So I think that there's some work certainly that can be done just in making sure we can execute what we promise and to look at our guests differently, right? Like consumer-based shopping and buying, that's something that we really need to look at, because I do believe the customer is, the voice of the stranger is more relevant to the guest than the voice of the brand. So how do we get our arms around that and sell non-traditionally, right? How do we look at merchandising, and what does that look like as we go forward? And I think that's where, in the CRS perspective and channel management, having that space, because that's where their spend is, right? Is around distribution. It's fixing our storefront. And so, how do we learn from other verticals like Amazon to be able to convert better? So, thoughts?
And there's so many partners at play, right? And I feel my peers here on stage, we do a fantastic job from a connection standpoint or integration, right? So on our end, for example, we facilitate over 1,800 partner connections in the ecosystem. And so how do we then look at additional partners that maybe have never been integrated into this space and open that up to hoteliers to really hone in on those unique touch points for the traveler throughout their journey?
I mean, it's a fascinating business because all of us on stage here, if you really think about it, in some respects compete with each other. Mm-hmm. but in a lot of respects, we work with each other. I mean, you know, we just finished a massive project for Marriott on GDS connectivity, and it's ultimately going to be with Amadeus. And so we compete on products, but then we also work together with Marriott to say, let's make this successful, which we did. And same thing with SiteMinder. There's times where I'm thinking like, oh, we're going up against SiteMinder, but the next thing I look at it and I say, oh, we need to work with SiteMinder on this product. So
See, all in that
so-
same swimming
right.
pool.
All in that same swimming pool. And that's kind of what makes the business, I think, fun. And just being at this conference and seeing that we're all competing with each other in some respects, but we're all basically here for the same reason, to provide travel experiences for people. And let's boil it down to what it is.
Yes. So I want to thank all of you for your attention at Act 2 and didn't just like boo us off stage after how adamant Act 1 was. But I do know that Act 3 will kind of bring it all together. But I want to thank all of my panelists. I think that they had a lot to offer and always are open to ideas because that's how innovation starts. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.